don't know if it's exhaustion from all the heat we've had or if it's just exhaustion from Derwood, but I really had to push myself to come back and do this particular video continuing on the Derwood phone call. But there's some really important things that are said in this section and I really wanted to address them. So I'm going to push on and hopefully I will finish dealing with this phone call today. I do want to look at his longer phone call that he made to Sunny as well as his discussion with that foggy woman, but I might take a few days break from Derwood and look at some other things before I get back to them. And with those ones, because they are quite lengthy, I'm not going to go straight through the entire thing. I haven't decided on the best way to tackle them just yet, but I really just don't want to do a full run through of a 1 hour audio, especially when we're talking about Derwood here. Now again, I just want to start by thanking everyone for the support that they're giving my channel at the moment, especially the super thanks, the buy me a coffee, membership to Patreon. I think I've missed more days in the last month in terms of putting out videos than I have in the entire year preceding that, thanks to the hot weather and the bushfires and all that sort of stuff. So it's going to take a little while for me to boost my channel back up, and those things have definitely helped me. I also, of course, want to thank everyone who's subscribed to my channel and welcome the new subscribers who've recently joined. You make a huge difference. You're the reason that my channel keeps going, so you are greatly appreciated. That said, if you watch my videos regularly and you're not yet subscribed, I would love it if you would subscribe to my channel. I can see my subscriptions gradually nudging up towards that 7,000 subscriber mark, which is my current goal. Now, I should probably offer an apology to all those people who've sent me messages, emails, texts, etc. in the last week, because I know I'm behind in terms of responding to those. It's just that pure exhaustion from multiple days where the weather's been upwards of 40 degrees. It appears that we're getting some cooler weather at the end of this week, so hopefully that will allow me to bounce back and get back into the swing of things properly. So on that note, let's just jump into this audio.
He would probably know to leave his cell phone at home, right? I mean, if somebody watches enough true crime or has any two brains what about them, they would know that you do not take your tracking device with you unless there's...
By the way, the cops are still on him heavy.
Oh, yes, yes.
So this is following on from the comment that Daniel is just stupid enough to think he's smart, I think the comment was. So Sunny's saying he'd probably know to leave his cell phone at home. If anybody watches enough true crime or has, any two brain cells, then they would know this. Derwood doesn't respond to that question. And I'm really, really curious about why that is. Because she is saying, well, he'd probably know to leave his phone at home. And, anyone with half a brain cell would know this, or if someone who's followed true crime. And Derwood's response is, and by the way, the cops are still on him. So clearly in his brain there's a connection there between whether or not Daniel would have left his cell phone at home and the cops being still onto him. But he hasn't answered Sunny's question. All we get from him is a couple of yeps when she's talking about if someone knows enough about true crime and has their brains about them. So it's the kind of agreeing with, if a person does know these things, you would expect them to know not to take their phone with them. But he's not addressing the notion of Daniel knowing or not knowing to leave his cell phone behind. Now, this is just before the documents came out. And of course, we see in the documents that Daniel told the officers that he left his phone at home on the Friday. He took it with him on the Saturday when he was with his friends, but, you know, he was out searching all day Friday, but he never thought to take it with him. And here's the thing about that. Let's just pretend that we believe his story in terms of either he ran up into the woods briefly and then came down, jumped in the car, drove around and came back and then went into the woods. Or he immediately jumped in the car, drove around, came back and then went into the woods after that. But the thing is, I could imagine someone in that initial moment of panic to be thinking, I've got to go search, and forget their phone the first time. But he returned to the property 2 or 3 times. After he forgot it the first time, you would think that it would occur to him to take it with him after that. But apparently, he didn't think at all to take it with him that day. And there's a statement in the documents where he says that he always takes his phone with him, which, you know, it's a reflex thing. I mean, even if you weren't needing to use it, there are still actions that are reflex actions associated with taking your phone with you. So if you're someone who takes your phone and you sit it in the middle console of your vehicle, then it's just normal that when you stop, before you get out of your vehicle, you reach and you grab your phone out of the console. It's part of the routine of turning off the car and getting out of the car. So you would notice immediately that you don't have your phone. If you're out looking for missing children and your partner is back at the house because someone needs to be at the house with your younger child, then you're going to be waiting for them to make a phone call to say it's all good, they've turned up. And you're going to realise, oh, well, that's not going to happen because I don't have the phone. But apparently he didn't take it with him at all on the Friday. So Sonny is definitely right in questioning this. But again, why did Derwood jump straight to talking about, well, and by the way, the cops are still on him, rather than responding to her comments about the phone? Is it because he knows the situation there in terms of Daniel and his phone? Or is it because maybe he's involved and he's just having one of those oh crap moments where he suddenly realised that he jumped in to help and didn't leave his phone at home? Or could it be that the reason he jumped to saying, and by the way, the cops are still on him, because in his mind, Sonny said, well, you know, he'd known to leave his phone at home, and Derwood has thought, yeah, so they can't pin anything on him because he didn't have his phone. Which then goes to, and they're still on him. And in his mind, he's probably going, and they're not going to get him because he didn't take his phone. Whatever the reason is for this jump in the conversation, to me, it certainly points at the very least towards Daniel's guilt, because it's something that Derwood hasn't addressed, but instead has jumped straight to the cops being still on him, in terms of we are still discussing Daniel being guilty. So I've said numerous times that this phone call is clearly a backup plan for Derwood. He asked Sonny not to release it, keep it private, but have it there just in case. And he said he thought things were going to possibly change and that people were going to come after him for his involvement. That's not exactly the words he used, but that's what he's inferring when he says people are going to come after me for what I've said. I think his big concern is that at this point in time, he already knows that there's a good possibility of him being charged with obstruction. But of course, they can't charge him with obstruction until after they make arrests in the case. Because you can imagine a probable cause document charging someone with obstruction in a case that they're saying is still being investigated under the Missing Persons Act. It's going to blow their case right out of the water. So they're kind of hampered in that they cannot put any charges on Derwood until they actually make arrests. But it seems that his fear is that if Daniel is arrested, he's going down with him. Or if Malaya starts to talk, she's going to incriminate Derwood. Because in the following phone call, the longer one, he does mention that he was concerned because Malaya was starting to talk. So it seems that for Derwood, at this point in time, he was still wanting to go strong in defence of Daniel, even though he knew the writing was on the wall. And I find that really curious. That to me says that he's got to be involved somehow. Because to be saying these things in this phone call and saying, look, I know Daniel's responsible, but say keep it private and then go online and still publicly defend Daniel for months and months, and even now he's still doing it with that Hidden in the Fog channel. So this is all about saving Derwood's ass. But you'll notice with things like avoiding this answer to the cell phone question, what he's doing is he's saying to Sunny, yeah, Daniel's guilty, but he's avoiding giving her any information that she could actually give to the RCMP. He's not giving her anything solid. I mean, even when she says, you know, if Daniel did this, where are they? He comes out with, well, they're in the ground outside the search area. That really doesn't give someone much that they could then go to the RCMP and said, this is what we've been told in terms of the location of the children. So I suspect that the reason why we get no answer here in terms of the cell phone is because it is going to incriminate Daniel directly. Because if he were to say, yes, Daniel intentionally left his phone at home on the Friday, this is what he told me, then he's just basically dobbed Daniel in. So I think that's possibly what's going on here and why he jumps instead to the cops are still on him. He probably thinks he's avoiding the question, but in actual fact, he's given away a lot through this response.
And I believe the cops are on the same premise I got.
Yes.
On. I believe the cops know he did it.
Yep.
But they need the bodies or
Yep.
the kids to lay charges. Because
Yep.
you can't charge a guy with murder until you have a body.
Yep.
So first of all, we get the really vague, he did it, as opposed to saying exactly what he did. Not saying, yeah, the cops know that he killed the children, or the cops know that he did whatever to the children. It's just that vague thing that Daniel and Janie and Derwood all do. This vague reference that really doesn't give any sort of indication of what happened to the children. But it also doesn't indicate anything in terms of them possibly wandering off. But you will have noticed how much trouble he had spitting that sentence out. He kept repeating himself and really struggling to actually simply say that he thinks the cops believe the same thing as him, that Daniel is the one responsible for what happened to Lily and Jack. But he just bumbles his way through. And I think, again, this goes back to this phone call is not intended to publicly incriminate Daniel. For some reason, it is still in Derwood's best interests to be coming out publicly and making it look like Malay is responsible for all this and Daniel is innocent. So it's like his brain has gone, I need to do this phone call to save my ass. I need to have this as my little insurance policy. But then when he's doing it, he's really struggling to actually admit his knowledge of the case, and that's what it is here. He knows Daniel is responsible. I think he knows a lot more than what he's letting on in this phone call. And there's something in his brain saying, don't dob him in. Like I said a few times, this guy has all the signs of someone who shows a dark triad personality. So I can't see that his concern here is over Daniel. I think his concern here is that he's somehow involved himself in this case, and that if Daniel goes down, he may well go down as well. And I think that's why he's struggling to spit out these things that incriminate Daniel. And then we get this comment about them needing the bodies or the children to lay charges. Note how he's thrown in or the children on the end of that, because he's not ready to let go of his narrative of Malaya hiding the children somewhere. For some reason, even though he knows that the outcome down the track could well be that arrests are made and Daniel goes down for what he did, I think in his mind, Derwood believes that they're not going to find the children's remains, which would mean they're not going to make arrests, and he's home and hosed. And I think that also explains why he didn't want this phone call made public, because I think that in his head, he truly believed that the RCMP would never find the children, therefore there would be no arrests. So this phone call would just be kept private. You've got to remember too that he didn't realise Sunny was recording him. He thought she was copying down a statement that he was making. So this part here isn't part of his statement. This is just a conversation between the two of them. So he probably believes that there's no record of, well, at the time that he was doing this, believed that there was no record of this conversation, because this wasn't what he was telling Sunny to write down. So even though he's not going to say outright what Daniel did, or say outright just how Daniel is guilty, he's still pushing this narrative of, yeah, Daniel did a bad thing, but I'm not going to tell you what the bad thing is. I'm not going to give you details because this is going to come back in my face. I mean, clearly, the things that he told Sunny to write down, he was expecting them to come out in public at some point in time, because otherwise, why would you contact a YouTube creator? But I do think that he thought Sunny was the sort of person who would sit on it and not release it until he said so. But of course, Sunny made the mistake of thinking other people were as trustworthy as she is. She thought other people were the sort of people like she is that honour their promises. So she shared it with someone, and suddenly it's being circulated. I gather that a lot of people trusted this Lana back then. I don't know why, but it seems that that is the situation. And unfortunately, Sunny seemed to think that this Lana was trustworthy and shared this audio with her, and then next thing you know, Lana's sharing it in a chat group. But Derwood seems convinced here that you couldn't press charges in a nobody case. He's saying it as an outright statement. Now, I've just got to share this because I find it amusing. Now, if you've followed my channel for a while, you'll know that early on in this case, I called out one creator for basically stealing my content, for plagiarising my content. That creator is still doing that. And AB came out and said, you know, I make sure that I credit you with everything. If I use your content, I credit you. Well, I was listening to when he was talking about this with shenanigans, and they got to this point and they're talking about the nobody thing. And he says, look, you know, there's these cases, and he reeled out the same cases that I had just done a video about a few days earlier. Harmony Montgomery, Classic and Sincere, Michael Vaughan. He's like, they're three that I know of. And I'm sitting there thinking, I wonder how many people are watching this video right now who watched my video a few days ago where I covered those cases in terms of nobody charges. I half expected him to go on and talk about Dee Warner and Suzanne Morphew, because I also discussed them in that same video. But he seemed satisfied with the first three because they were the children that I had spoken about. But yes, I noticed, and I'm sure plenty of other people noticed also. But, that's exactly the point. Yes, you can prosecute someone, even if you have no bodies. It's all about collecting evidence, making sure that you have a strong enough case, a strong enough circumstantial case to prosecute. There are so many other things that can be used as evidence. Yes, it's always good to have that autopsy there that tells you cause of death, that may make a connection with the person who is being accused. But this idea that you can't charge someone without a body, so naive, especially these days, because we have so many advances in forensic science that you can build a rock-solid case without a body. And I truly believe that, given what is already known publicly, that they are building a rock-solid case and there will be arrests. And I wonder if that is something that Malaya has truly thought about. Because I would imagine as a mother that you would actually want to be able to lay your children to rest properly. But it seems like she seems to think the same as the rest of them. Well, if they can't find them, they're not going to arrest us and we won't go to jail. Well, all that's going to happen is that you will be arrested without their bodies, and when they are laid to rest, you won't get to be a part of that. They're not going to give you a day pass to go to your children's funeral and to go and see your children being buried or whatever the arrangement is going to be. Maybe in 10, 15 years' time, you'll get out and you can go to their headstones and pay your respects then. But they're not going to allow you, after you've been arrested, you don't get to be a part of that. And I mean, so many content creators have been saying for months now, the first person who speaks is the person who gets the deal. And maybe for Malaya, coming out and speaking and getting a deal could include being allowed to be a part of the whole process in terms of laying her children to rest. Just a little segue, but I just thought it was something worth pointing out because I'd imagine that Malaya, being somewhat naive, probably hasn't thought about those sort of things.
That's why they gave him, I guarantee you, Darren, that's why they gave him a phone. That's not normal that they hand you a phone when they take yours. Usually, most times, you have to actually, wait till you get your phone back. We see this in...
That's interesting. I never knew that happened.
Yeah, they gave him a phone.
Now, let's acknowledge here that the information about Daniel being given a phone while they had his came directly from Daniel. Daniel, who has claimed that several detectives told him months ago that him and his mother had been cleared in the case. Daniel, who claimed that he watched them tick a box on the form when he was giving consent for his blood sample or DNA, he watched them tick a box that said no criminal involvement. And we've seen those forms, there's no box there. Daniel, who also made up a second pink blanket in his interview with the turkey guy. I'm still not quite sure of the logic behind him doing that, but there was no second blanket. You may have seen the video I did on that where I basically emailed the RCMP and got clarification on that, and they made it quite clear there was only the one blanket with the two pieces. I mean, I could go on and continue listing Daniel's lies, but we'd be here all day, so probably won't do that. That said, if they did give Daniel a spare phone while they had his, that would have been a stroke of genius. And I can see the logic behind doing something like that, because this guy just doesn't know when to shut up. Now, obviously, if they were to give him a phone that they were going to listen in on, they would have to get permission from the court to do so. And being as how they were investigating under the Missing Persons Act, they would have to tread very, very carefully in terms of providing justification for doing so. Because they couldn't say, we want to give this guy a phone that we can monitor because we believe he is responsible. Because straight away there goes all your protection in terms of being able to use the Missing Persons Act. So they would have had to have worded it in a way that made it sound like it was still connected to the missing persons case, not looking at it in a criminal sense. But, you know, when you look at the documents that we've seen, Corporal Curl clearly knows what she's doing in terms of writing these documents. That is her job. She's the legal person for them that writes these documents, puts in these applications. So she knows what she can and can't say in terms of making these requests without making it sound like they are looking at it in terms of it being a criminal investigation. And we heard in one of the most recent interviews where they mentioned that they were using digital forensics in their investigation. So while we can't take Daniel's statement about being given a phone as being fact, it's probably something to keep in mind, because it certainly would be a great investigative strategy to do that.
To use, right? So I'm thinking that they gave him a phone right away, just to, again, if he wants to hang himself, hang himself. You know.
I don't think he's stupid enough to do that.
Now this comment, I don't think he's stupid enough to do that. That just came out of left field for me. He's already said that he thinks that Daniel is stupid enough to think he's smart. But now when Sonny's talking about Daniel having this extra phone and that maybe they gave it to him so he would hang himself, Derwood suddenly says, I don't think he's stupid enough to do that. And then he brushes past that and starts changing the topic. So there is something about the RCMP monitoring Daniel's phone that is triggering for Derwood. It's a topic that he wants to avoid. And in fact, what he says next shows me that he does believe that Daniel is stupid enough to do that. So I think that what he was doing here is moment of panic, wants to squash this idea that the RCMP may have been listening in on Daniel's phone. And before we go on with the next bit of audio in relation to that, this again is another incriminating comment. By saying, I don't think he's stupid enough to do that, he's essentially saying, yes, there are things that Daniel could say that would land him in prison, that would help make an arrest, but he's not stupid enough to actually do that. You would only say that person is not stupid enough to do that if you believed that there was something that they could incriminate themselves over. So he has once again dumped Daniel in it. Like I said, I think his intention with this phone call was to hint at Daniel's guilt without throwing him right in, because he didn't want himself being incriminated. So that is why we've not had a lot of direct statements in terms of specifics. But it's the statements like this that make it clear that Derwood knows for certain that Daniel is the one responsible for what happened to the children. He's not speculating, he knows.
But another thing I'm getting, and I got to watch for, I think along the line at times over the last couple of days, Daniel is almost thinking of trying to frame me into this. I think he's trying to make it look like I was the guy that picked the kids up at the side of the road.
You know,
he's given me information.
Yeah.
Weird information that sorta, if somebody else listened to that.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, one YouTuber already went that direction. That means.
Oh yeah. Right.
I mean, she literally blamed me. She literally said, right on her program that she was calling the cops because she was sure I had something to do with
Well,
it. And I'm sure she even wrote in a comment that I was probably the driver.
This one bit of audio shows you just how devious this guy is. So, Sonny has mentioned this story that Daniel has come up with about them giving him a phone while they had his phone. Whether they did or not, who knows? But this is what Daniel is claiming. And all of a sudden, Derwood suddenly changes his direction and starts talking about that he thinks that Daniel might be trying to frame him. And note how there's this major word salad going on. He is bumbling along before he even gets to the point. You know, he doesn't just come out with, well, I think Daniel might be trying to frame me. No, but another thing. I'm getting a long pause, and I get to watch for, and another long pause. Long pause. I think along the line, at times, over the last couple of days, there is not even a full sentence in any of that. And even when he finally gets to the point, there's this word salad around it. You know, Daniel is almost thinking and trying to frame me into this. I mean, all this bumbling word salad stuff before saying that he thinks Daniel is trying to frame him makes him look guilty as, especially with all the pauses. And then for someone who usually avoids going into specifics, in this instance, he does then go into specifics. And he says, I think he's trying to make it look like I was the guy that picked up the kids. And then he fumbles again at the side of the road. Now, if you didn't hear the next bit, then you could think that, well, Derwood's just saying this to protect his back because he's seen the way that Daniel has tried to blame Malaya for everything. And he's probably thinking, well, the moment it comes out that I've given this information, Daniel's probably going to frame me. But then he continues to speak and he gives himself away, because that's when he says about that Daniel's given him weird information that if somebody listened to that. So this is straight after Sonny basically hinting at, well, if they did give him her phone, it was so they could listen to his conversations. And Derwood has picked up on that, and he's gone into, in my opinion, panic mode. He's worried about some sort of conversation that he has had with Daniel. If you take out all the bumbling and just cut to the point, what he has told Sonny here is that he is afraid that someone may have listened to conversations that they had over the phone that may make it look like he was the person who picked the children up on the side of the road. But he's spinning it in terms of, well, Daniel's made it look like this because of the way he was talking in these conversations. So let's apply a little bit of logic here. How can a conversation that you think is private over the phone between two people be misconstrued in terms of them thinking that Daniel is accusing Derwood of collecting the children in a vehicle? The only way anyone could get that information is if they were discussing that between them on the phone. Now, he wouldn't have to worry and claim that he thinks Daniel is trying to frame him if in this private conversation Daniel had said, oh, I might just blame you and say you were the one that put them in the car. And Derwood was like, you do that and I'll smack you out because that's not true. No, clearly it hasn't happened that way. Whatever conversation he's referring to here sounds like it does incriminate Derwood. So he's thinking, well, I'm going to get ahead of that and say that, well, Daniel's trying to frame me. And then he decides to create a bit of plausible deniability. He brings up this woman, this means motive or whatever the channel is called. And he says that she even thought that he was involved somehow. And then he says, and I'm sure she even wrote in a comment that I was probably the driver. He's not saying that she definitely did. This is BS. The moment someone says, well, I'm sure she did this, that means I'm making this up on the spot. And if you went back to whatever the video was, you would probably not find that comment. You know, by the time someone starts adding in all these extra words into their sentence to convince you, then you know that they're not 100% certain, or they're not 100% truthful. So him saying, I'm sure this happened, means that no, he's not sure that happened and it probably didn't happen. He is trying to use persuasive language to sway his audience. Now, the next bit of audio that I'm going to play, I was almost going to leave it out of this because I don't understand the context. I don't really understand what's going on here. It feels like the topic has changed, but it's got to be somehow related to this conversation of Derwood trying to claim that he thinks that Daniel is trying to frame him.
You know, but trust me when I say that those Fruit Loops live. There are a ton of those people. But in saying that, Darren, when we did that live after Daniel said that Charmaine could share messages, right? Well, there wasn't really anything that was good said about Malaya, but Charmaine's like, well, he said I could share, so I'm going to share what I think is whatever. Now, she did rush it, however, granted, when we first put them out, because I'm usually the one that does the work on the live and cut and crop and do whatever. But anyways, she totally believes, and I wouldn't doubt it if this was true, because it was right after somebody pretending to be Daniel was saying that those messages were fake. It's almost like he had someone go out there and say that those messages were fake.
I get where you're going. And do you know that right before she blamed me, she put on her post or video the interview with Belinda Gray, Sullivan's mother.
Yeah.
And she was blaming that before she blamed me. She was saying, "Oh, there's something wrong with this woman. She's involved in this." She blamed her, then she blamed the son, and then she blamed me right after that. And my woman and I were watching her, and my woman was getting a little violent. She was saying, "Boy, oh boy, I think I'd like to get a hold of this one by the throat." She's a real nutball.
So Sunny's saying that when she shared those screenshots of the messages between her and Daniel, or messages from Daniel, that someone came on board and was accusing her of putting fake messages or something like that. I'm not sure how that connects with this conversation of Daniel trying to frame Derwood, other than the simple thing of, well, Daniel clearly didn't want those messages shared and he was trying to redact his messages. Meanwhile, Derwood's still on the thing with this woman, the means whatever woman, and he goes on to talk about her. Right before me, she blamed Belinda. So he's trying to establish that she's a complete utter kook. So what he's done here, from the Sunny saying, well, Daniel says that they gave him a phone, it seems to me Derwood has gone, oh crap, someone might have heard a conversation between us that they shouldn't have heard. So I'm going to now tell you, because you're my alibi, I'm going to tell you that I think Daniel's trying to frame me, and that there were weird things that he was saying to me over the phone that might make me look like I really was involved, and might make it look like I picked up the children. And then he's throwing in this means motive woman to establish, oh, this is where Daniel got the idea. But when he does do that, he says, oh, he's positive that she made the comment that in a post that she thought he was the person driving the car. So essentially, he's trying to say, here's where Daniel got it from, but you won't find it because she didn't actually say it outright in a video. Oh, she made a comment. I'm positive that she made a comment, or I'm sure that she made a comment. And then, of course, if anyone went looking for it and said the comment's not there, he's then got the back up of going, well, she must have deleted it. And then he doubles down by claiming, well, the woman's a kook because she's accused Belinda of being involved, which anyone who does accuse Belinda of being involved clearly is a kook. But what he's trying to establish here is that this is his narrative that he's pushing on Sonny right now, is that this kooky woman came up with the idea that he was involved, and that she may have even said that she thought he was the one driving the vehicle, but you can't believe her because she also accused Belinda. But Daniel must have got the idea from this woman, and now he's trying to frame Derwood with this idea that he got from this woman. When someone goes this over the top to try and give themselves some level of deniability, then you know that they're lying to you. Him coming up with this elaborate story just to clear his name and say he's not involved in any way does the opposite for me. Nobody is going to come up with such an elaborate story if they are actually completely innocent and not involved. And then, of course, he has to put that little cherry on the top, saying that his woman was just getting really angry with this means motive woman because she wanted to have a go at her because of the things she was saying, because of the accusations. So this is supposed to seal the deal. This is supposed to convince Sonny that, yeah, Darren is completely innocent of all this. Because not only is he now, giving you the, well, this is why Daniel would say this, these are the things that make me look guilty, which is, totally I'm not. But then he throws in and my woman's getting so angry about it. It's Darren's or Derwood's favourite thing of throwing in an additional person to support his story. I mean, when someone is trying to show you that they are innocent, when they add layer and layer and layer of explanations onto their story, then you've really got to start asking questions. And I really hope that the RCMP hold this guy in and question him, because that is a heck of a lot of bumbling to claim that Daniel's allegedly trying to set him up as being involved, and that he thinks that Daniel might even suggest that Derwood was driving the car. That's a heck of a lot of layering of information on top of it to try and say, well, it's just, it's a lie, it's not truthful. I was never involved. Like, sure, the guy was not involved in any way, and yet here we are back in August, maybe July, where he is admitting that he knows that Daniel is the person responsible for what happened to the children. He knows that Daniel is guilty. He is admitting it to Sonny here and asking her to basically sit on this information. And yet publicly he was still defending Daniel. Not only that, but he was making threats to anyone who questioned his story. He was trolling people's channels if they questioned his story. I think he is blocked from most YouTube channels now, just because of the way he was just so persistent, so annoying, so verbally aggressive. Tell me that is the actions of someone who is not involved in this. Because to me, his words and his actions make it look like he is in this up to the eyeballs. Now there's 2 more little bits of audio at the end of the phone call, which I'll play, and then I'll discuss them briefly, and then I will say what I think is going on here. Why did Derwood choose this point in time to make this phone call? We know that he told Sonny in the other phone call that he thought Malaya was starting to speak again, and he was worried about her making him look guilty or something like that. But there's more to this. And I'll come back to that after I address these last 2 bits of audio.
Say, I think it might be a good thing to say. If you want to say on your next broadcast that Logan, Daniel's cousin, is going for custody of Meadow from CPS.
Okay.
That would be fine.
Okay.
And you could say where you got it from. You could say where you got that information from too. That would be fine.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Did you end up talking to Daniel?
I haven't talked to Daniel yet. I tried his number, but he's out there. His cell phone doesn't work for a bit, so I left a message for him to call me.
Yeah.
And I've got a couple errands to run here right now, and when I do my errands, if he doesn't call me by then, I'm going to go out and see him.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Hey.
Okay.
Darren, if you can remember this, just try to see what actually one day he worked on. Just if you can get that.
Okay.
Like if
I can get that easily. I know the boys that run the mill.
Oh, okay. Because I'm just curious what that. I just kind of want to get that one answer out of my head. What day was it that he worked one day a week?
I think I understand.
Yeah,
I think I understand the connection you might be looking for too.
Yeah, if it's there. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
He'd know that area up there very well too, wouldn't he?
Yes, he would. Yes.
Okay, so the first question would have to be, why does he want her to tell her viewers that Logan is going for custody of Meadow? Is it just because he wants to be the person that has inside information that he's sharing, and it makes him feel important to give this inside information and have Sunny share it? Or could there be another reason? I honestly think that even though on one hand he's claiming to Sunny that, this phone call that he just made is him protecting his back because he knows that Daniel's responsible and he's just playing along, I think the idea was to get this information out there about Logan going for custody of Meadow to screw with Malaya's brain. I think Daniel's asked him to put this information out there. And I think this goes back to the classic move that we already know that Daniel and Derwood were in cahoots in terms of getting Meadow taken from Malaya in the first place. He set Malaya up. Him and Daniel set Malaya up to leave Cindy's place and do a runner to Henry's place. And then, now Daniel claims that it was Cindy that contacted CPS, but if you go back and listen to the video that I did where I spoke about this whole thing, it actually seems more likely that Daniel did actually report Malaya to CPS after making sure that she did a runner. So Daniel and Derwood deliberately set Malaya up to lose custody of Meadow. That makes me think not only was that done in spite, and it was done the day before Daniel's thing with CPS to try and get access, but it seems, based on Daniel's personality and based on everything that's been said, it seems that this was Daniel just making sure that Malaya understood he was still in control. So I think that Derwood wanting Sunny to say out on her channel that Logan's going for custody of Meadow, that message is meant for Malaya. And I suspect that it is a follow-up on them basically making her lose custody of Meadow in the first place. So often when you see these sorts of relationships crumble, what you see is the coercive partner using the children as collateral or as weapons to control their ex-partner. And I think that is exactly what's going on here. They've orchestrated for Malaya to lose custody of Meadow, and now this is a reminder for Malaya, we're going to make sure Logan gets custody of Meadow. You need to toe the line. As for the question about the mill, That one's really interesting too, because according to Derwood, Daniel would go and hang out at their place after work with Jordan when they were both working at the mill together. You would think that would mean that they would be, based on Daniel's activities, hanging out at the house, getting into not so legal recreational activities, not exploring the area around there. And yet, when Sonny offers the question, he'd know that way up there very well too, Derwood says yes, he would. Based on Daniel's recreational activities and the sort of activities that I would imagine he would also participate in with Jordan, I can't see him going exploring around Foxbrook area. So I don't think he would know it as well as he would know the Lansdowne Station area. So why is it important for Derwood to insist that Daniel would know that area really well? At the most, there would be a location probably a short distance from Derwood's old house where Daniel and Jordan would have gone to partake in their recreational activities without anyone else being aware of it. But that would be one area that they would have consistently gone to. They wouldn't be exploring the area together. Like, it makes no sense. Unless they spent a lot of time together as teenagers exploring the area, which would make sense and would also show you the connection with Derwood is even stronger than what he is trying to insinuate. So either Derwood is trying to give the impression here that Daniel does know that area better than what he really would do, or Derwood is giving away the fact that actually Daniel might have spent a lot of time at his place when he was a teenager, and therefore Derwood would know him even better than what he alludes to. Although, with Jordan saying that he's known Daniel since they were about 14, 14-year-old boys mostly don't go just exploring the woods together. I would imagine by that stage they were already smoking things at the very least, rather than going exploring. So that goes back to why is Derwood wanting to say that, yeah, Daniel would know that area very well. Is it an area that perhaps the RCMP need to run a drone over? Is Derwood trying to create plausible deniability by saying that Daniel does know that area very well? Just a thought, just putting that out there into the ether. So that finally brings us to the end of this audio. And I've said that I would, having gone through it all, that I would then talk about why I think this happened at this particular time. It seems pretty clear that when Derwood contacted Sunny and got her to write this stuff down for him, that this wasn't him having this moment where he decided to start walking the right track, do the right thing. He had this revelation where he realised he needed to be a good person from there on in. No, this was him basically covering his arse. And we know that for a fact, because this stuff, he wasn't saying this publicly. After this conversation with Sunny, he was still publicly coming out in defence of Daniel, even though he's shown here that he knows that Daniel is guilty. It's only in the last month or so that he started claiming that Daniel was responsible. And now he seems to have backtracked again with this Hidden in the Fog channel. And I'm going to talk about that. I'm not going to do like a big long talk through like this, but I am going to address the things that were said in that. But it seems like he is now backtracking from his accusations against Daniel. Yes, he expressed concerns that Malaya was starting to speak and he thought she might incriminate him somehow. He wanted to get out ahead of that so that he didn't get charged with anything, which says a lot. But if Charmaine is correct in saying that this phone call occurred on the 20th of August, this was the day before the release of the redacted documents. Derwood had had that meeting with the RCMP when they called him in at the end of May and hauled him over the coals. So for starters, he was probably worried about that being mentioned in the documents. But he was probably also worried about what else might be included in those documents. He was nervous about the release of the documents the following day. He didn't know what was going to be in them, so he decided that he would contact Sonny and make this statement to protect his ass. Honestly, in my opinion, this guy seems to be the slimiest snake in the grass that I've ever come across. He is not to be trusted. Yes, I think there is some leakage in his statements. There are times when he throws in some truths to try and support some other statement. But he is, in my opinion, a dangerous individual. He will stab anyone in the back to protect himself. He will throw anyone under the bus to protect himself. And then when things really start to get tricky, he will start making threats against people. We've seen all this. Anyway, if I don't turn the aircon on very, very soon, I'm going to melt. So I'm going to finish it here. So thanks for listening. If you are new to my channel, please subscribe. Also, please hit the like button and please leave a comment below. So thank you, and I'll catch you in the next one.